Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. So I've been saying for a little while that we're going to have a strong dollar in our future. And a lot of people kind of argue with me with that. And they say, nope, we got inflation. Inflation's coming. Hyperinflation's coming. And dollar is going to hell. And I say, nope, for at least for a short time, we are going to have a strong dollar in our future. And I was listening to this interview with this guy, Brett Johnson, who really put it together very well because he has this theory called the milkshake theory. And I really dig this. So let me see if I can do this. During the quantitative easing program, central banks around the world had injected money into the system, right? They printed up a bunch of money and they added this liquidity to the system, right? This was essentially the building of the milkshake, right? Because this liquidity ended up inflating the assets of like the housing markets, the stock markets, the bond markets, right? All this newfound money that got injected to the system inflated all these assets. Now, what ended up happening here is that a couple of years ago, the United States started raising interest rates, and this caused a ripple throughout the rest of the world. There was starting to be a slowdown, right? So these central banks around the world started going back into a quantitative easing program, or at least a monetary easing program, where they're going to try and keep this liquidity into the system. Okay. At the same time, the United States is now pulling their assets off or pulling their liabilities, which is the folding Federal Reserve notes that we use every day. That's their liabilities. They're pulling those off the markets while letting their treasuries mature. Okay. So what does that all mean? The United States is letting their dollars dry up, so to speak, right? The liquidity is shrinking because they're pulling these dollars out of the system. The rest of the world, they're building, right? They're adding dollars to their system, okay? So what ends up happening is their dollar is getting weak because of how many are circulating out there while the United States is growing strong. Now, what ended up happening is that as these central banks began to to lower their interest rates and started adding this liquidity to the market, the United States at the same time said, okay, wait a minute, our dollar is growing too strong, too fast. Okay, and what we're going to have to do is slow down. So they stopped the raising of interest rates because the rest of the world was growing so weak to the dollar. All right. Now, this is going to be continuing because the rest of the world is going back into this monetary easing policies, right? Where they're at least trying to keep interest rates low and keep liquidity high, right? So what they're going to end up doing is that these people who live in these countries need a place to put their money, and they're going to be scared because as their dollar is starting to shrink shrink in purchasing power, the weakening of their dollar, they're going to want to get into a stronger dollar, which is going to be the United States, the king dollar, right? The world reserve currency. So as people start getting into this is going to keep the United States Treasury yields very low as far as the interest rates because so many buyers are going to come into it. At the same time, the Federal Reserve is going to be trying to unload theirs, pulling even more dollars out of the system, causing the dollar to even go stronger. Our exports are going to go to hell, okay? We will not have exports, but our imports are going to become super cheap, okay? At least for a short time. The dollar will buy like you have never seen. All right, Uneducated Economist. Talk to you later.